Welcome back to another episode of Steph's podcast, where I bring you weekly hacks, updates, and strategies around accessory dwelling units, specifically in California, but also soon to be nationwide. I bring different guests who are implementing the ADU strategy, any real estate hacks, midterm rental, multifamily. Those are sort of the topics that you should expect week by week. And if this sounds like you may be a good fit to be on my podcast, maybe you're in this realm of ADUs, feel free to reach out to me, and I look forward to having you on the episode. Enjoy this one, and I'll see you on the next one. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Steph's podcast. This is episode 68, and today we have a very special guest. He's now my friend. Hopefully, we are after this. We have a lot of friends in common, and as you guys know, I'm very intentional every single week with who I bring on as a guest. We're always talking about different real estate strategies, specifically in the ADU niche world, right? Mm-hmm. And today I have Muhammad with me. We're going to talk about housing policies and a whole bunch of good stuff. But let me give you guys the short version of his bio, and then he'll talk about a lot of his accomplishments and what he's been able to do in the housing space, which is a huge topic for investors and homeowners in general. So I'm thrilled to introduce Muhammad, the visionary founder of Housing Policy Innovations. Muhammad's impact on housing policy has been nothing short of groundbreaking, from securing over $250 million in funding for transformative urban projects to shaping key state and local laws, which is huge. His work is redefining what's possible in our housing industry, and I don't think a lot of people really bring awareness around who's doing that, right? Like everybody's just pointing the finger at each other, but nobody's really who's actually doing that and like making changes. Muhammad's expertise, honed through his work at UC Berkeley Turner Center for Housing Innovation, dives deep into some of the most pressing issues in housing today: racial inequalities, income distribution, and access to affordable housing. And I'll kind of stop there and, hand it off to Muhammad so he can tell you guys in detail what it is that he does, what he's been able to accomplish, and why it's so important for you to really get to know him and understand his role in our housing world. So I'll hand it off to you, Muhammad. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, I know it's a lot in the bio. And just to be clear, I am here to represent Housing Policy Innovations. It is my consulting firm, UC Berkeley's Turner Center for Housing Innovations. Like, none of my views, none of this relates to my day job, my W-2 job. But I think it's important.
And one that I wanted you to talk about, which is why I handed it off to you, was Casita Coalition and your role in that. Because I am a member. For those of you who don't know, if you're wanting to tap into the ADU space, I always tell clients or investors one of the best ways to get started is, joining the Casita Coalition as a member. And so if you want to share with people kind of what your role is within that, and then what it is that you do, that'd be cool too.
Yeah, definitely. When I got into the housing space a few years ago, I was at California MB, and I was focused on just basically messaging all these really complex housing topics that were going through the legislature. And it was accessory dwelling units at the time, just basically the whole steam ahead that we had for legalization. Now I am placed on the board of the Casita Coalition, which, if you don't know, them and California MB and a few other people really were the reason why accessory dwelling units became legal in California and nationwide. And right now, there's a new executive director, Norena Limon, who was the vice president of NAREP, which is the National Hispanic Realtors Association. I can't tell you the acronym. Too many acronyms. Yeah. Basically, the Casita Coalition is going into this new chapter, this new ED, and I'm on the board, and we're looking forward to what's next when it comes to ADUs, how we implement laws a little bit better. And also, if you build ADUs, if you're anywhere related to the ADU space and you're not putting money into the Casita Coalition, you're kind of just mooching. Like, they're doing all the work to basically make it easier for you to build and also protect you, just so we don't have changes in state laws or admin law that could just basically put a pause in this whole space. Because California loves innovative stuff, And they also love to pass things that stops innovation suddenly because some bureaucrat doesn't understand policy. So it's just good to have that sort of like education, protection, and advocacy in an organization nationwide, actually.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, honestly, I've learned so much through them. I've not only learned a lot, but I've connected with a lot of people, like-minded people. I mean, I met you through the IMN event, but really, met through Andrew, which is also part of Casita. He's been a great mentor of mine. And I think a lot of people, take it for granted, that Casita, thanks to Casita Coalition, as you said, a lot of the things that we're allowed to do in the ADU space in California and nationwide wouldn't be here today, right? And so how did you get involved in that space, in the Casita Coalition space, and this whole housing, innovation movement, which I think I'm obviously all for, but like what kind of sparked that for you personally?
Yeah, I grew up in Stockton, California during the foreclosure crisis.
Mm,
So, like,
yeah,
everybody starts losing their homes, families get split apart, your teachers go away. Like, it was wild. Like, people thought the recession ended in 2011 and Stockton, that didn't end until like 2015, kinda, right? And
right.
so, like, yeah, I went through the whole education system, and then by some miracle, after community college, I made it to UC Berkeley as a student. And then like two of my friends couldn't pay rent, so we all got kicked out of this apartment illegally. And then I was sleeping in my car and going to school the whole time for my first semester at Cal while working as an Uber driver full time. And I was like, I have to literally crawl out to like make something, right? And it's interesting because the Turner Center had this study about affordability for whom, which is like how affordable housing is in California and for who. And the chances of someone from Stockton to move to the Bay Area is like less than 1%, even though it's an hour away. And it was like a lot of my friends were sent back, and it all revolved around housing. Like
Of course.
everything was housing. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
people need to live somewhere. So after a few other things that I did, right? I worked with Mayor Tubbs in his office for a while, and he paid me as an intern, and I advocated for paid internships in Congress, and got like I guess 7,000 interns paid, and launched this movement. But we got them paid, but it wasn't enough for like more than a month's rent. So it brought me back to the housing space. I joined Cal EMB. I joined Greenlining. I just trying to figure this crap out, basically.
Mm. So it was really like that housing situation in your personal life that really like drove you into how can I make an impact and make a difference in these housing solutions or innovations, which takes me to my next question. How did you like what were some of the first things that you were able to accomplish as far as like housing innovations in your market?
Yeah, definitely. At Cal EMB, during that time, we passed a lot of the ADU laws that everybody's using now. A whole industry has grown out of this. A lot more small builders. When I was at the Greenlining Institute, we really rethought how we can increase home ownership opportunities. And I wrote this paper about reforming like the Community Reinvestments Act, and it's this really wonky paper, but I found like $100 billion in affordable housing that like we could close a small loophole, and no one read this paper. Like no one cared. It was such a great paper. It was like, oh wow, we kind of found sort of like the solution for affordable housing, and no
Right.
one read it. Yeah, so I was like, oh, who's the organization that has papers that people actually read and who
Mhm.
respects their ideas? And it led
Mm.
me to UC Berkeley's Turner Center for Housing Innovation. And I'm the policy shop there. Um, Basically, I'm the only member on staff that focuses on policy, which is rare to even have a policy team in an academic institution. And I help inform local, state, and federal lawmakers on the laws that they should pass and also track the implementation of these laws. So
Mm.
I think, yeah, out
How
of
do
the
you
Turner shop.
decide that, because that's a
mm,
really powerful role to have, right?
mhm.
Yeah, that's a huge, powerful role to have. I'm curious to know, like, walk me through that process, right? As a policy advocate or you screen these different policies and how to implement them. What does that look like in your thought process? Like, what data do you look into and say, this is a good, policy here that should go through? And then these are the actionable steps that we should take to implement it. Like, because you have to kind of come up with that, right? Or how do you like screen that? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, our research team like churns a whole bunch of research on a whole bunch of topics, not just ADUs, but everything under the sun when it comes to housing. And from the research and data collection, we find sort of like what needs to be improved and what are like our recommendations on research. But research recommendations doesn't become policy. So I schedule calls and meetings with local and state officials on basically the latest research and what are these legislators' priorities and what are some of basically some research ideas that could become policy. And I think for about like 20 to 30 bills these last like 3 years, the Turner Center has had a hand in, and we don't sponsor or support legislation, but we have like great timing. So if it's like, yeah, so like the streamlining housing for church lands, right? Like you could build affordable housing on church land or religious organizational land, right? Like that bill died 3 years in a row. And our paper found, oh, it's like 5 times the size of Oakland. We have like an acre for every like unhoused person in the state of California. And we released that during a big vote. And now it became law, right? And we have a lot of those examples.
Yeah, so you have to be very strategic with timing. It sounds like super strategic with timing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we also have to have like the tough conversation, like the SB9 stuff. A lot of it came out of the Turner
Shop. Yeah, let's talk about the SB9 stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe first we can explain to people, what SB9 is when it passed, and then what were some of those hurdles that came about in this last year.
Yeah, definitely. So SB9, when it passed, is that if you're in a single family home, you could do a lot split, 40-60 lot split. And in the back, you could build a single family home with an ADU, or a duplex. And the intention was, and the original lot could also be 2 homes, right? So 1 home could become 4 homes. Local implementation wasn't great. Our studies found that we could build like 700,000 homes in California if everybody kind of chose to do this. But there were just some limitations when it came to local implementation. Homeowner occupancy requirement that disincentivized developers from building SB9 lot splits, local governments that don't really know how to even implement the law if they want to. Yesterday I was just talking to someone and they did everything with planning, but like the surveyors and engineers didn't feel comfortable doing an SB9 lot split. And the thing about policy and why ADUs were so successful is that every year we made it better. And SB9, we ignored it for like 2 years. We passed the bill to kind of make it better, but now we have to go back and make it better. And that's like a tough conversation because they love to be like one and done, right? I passed the bill, it's done. I solved the housing crisis. That's not what happens. I have to go in there and be like,
you have to be like, that's a good point. You do have to go back and readdress, issues that are coming about as the SB9, for example, as it was evolving. Some cities were giving pushback, as you mentioned. Some surveyors and engineers were also like, I don't feel comfortable doing this. It's like people being uncomfortable with the unknown or trying something new, right? So it's like having to work through that psychology. So you do have to make things better. And that's actually a good point. The fact that it was dismissed for 2 years in a row, where, clearly with ADUs, as you can see, you keep updating the code, you keep making it better. Look at what's happened, honestly, in the last 2 years. Because like from 2016 to 2020, it was kind of a shit show, right? Like working with cities, working with builders, working with architects. Everybody was like that Spider-Man meme where they were just pointing the finger at each other. And then come 2020, come 2021, 2023, right? Like every single year there has been new updates with ADU legislation, which have only allowed for it to build easier and better at a local level. And so I think having people like you in that realm that really kind of help push and streamline that process. Not only does it take time, but you do have to, I'm assuming you got to take into like your knowledge, people's consideration, do the research, and have a good team that kind of backs you up through it all, I'm assuming.
Yeah, definitely. And then it's like we have to pass the law again and make it better. And then that's what led to me founding this consulting group, is that like people in academia don't really know all the time what's going on. We only have data, but we don't have like practice. So
Yes.
housing policy and yeah, right. So it's like they're in their ivory towers, literally.
Right. So tell
So
me, yeah,
housing
tell me more about your consulting business and kind of what, what that offers and what that looks like.
Yeah. So like the next step was housing policy innovations because I saw two gaps in the space. Number one, new state laws are being passed. The industry doesn't know what's going on. You have startups, you have early businesses. They don't know about the new laws that are getting passed and how they could implement that into their business model. So I've been helping a few companies over the last few years,
Mm,
helping them with strategic long-term planning and making sure they don't break laws. Not as a lawyer, but as like a strategy consultant.
I love that.
Um, yeah, because it's like we need to implement these things and people need to know how to use it. And then the second part is, which I'm expanding into, is that every consulting group for cities is their premise is how do we get around state laws? How do we not do like how do we not implement SB9? How do we get around your housing element,
Right.
etc. So yeah, so housing policy innovations is just going to be like we're going to lean into state laws, we're going to help you implement it, and it's going to be less administrative burden because if imagine if every ADU went through a discretionary process, how much time planners would waste on that? No, we should lean into the streamlining so then these overworked planning departments are able to like enjoy their weekends again. So I'm helping these local cities innovate and think because the whole point of like the American system is that local governments, which we have 500 different jurisdictions in the state of California, could experiment and do cool things that we could bring to the state level and have everyone else replicate, and we
Right.
could bring down staff time. Yeah, solve the housing crisis.
No, that's great. I mean, I think the more that you can help these people in the city and help them with their mindset, help them streamline the process and how to reference the code in a way where, hey, where it's very clear, very transparent. Here's, the section where it lays out X, Y, and Z. Let me not have you work overtime and let me just hand it off to you and educate you because I think you're right. Like with cities, as ADU legislation keeps getting updated every year, sometimes even more, more than that every single year.
Yeah.
These cities aren't keeping up with it. I mean, you got people working 9 to 5 jobs there. They are your normal, regular people who are just not as excited about like, oh, let me learn the ADU legislation this year and be a top performer at my job. Like they're just working for the city. And so it's like, how can we make their life easier so that they in return can help us get through the finish line with these permits and just building better? Because you're right, like California is very good about being innovative, but when it comes to implementation, it's like, yeah, we don't know who to go to. And that's where we need people like you. I might even have to go work for you because one of the things that I was trying to figure out in my business, right? As a realtor, I'm like, okay, my model is to help investors buy and build or analyze their portfolio and look at ways that we can maximize highest and best use. And that's really coming at it from an ADU strategist perspective, where it's like, I'm not just here to tell you how much it's going to cost you to build, what you can and can't build. It's coming at it more of like, I actually know the code. I understand how to work with people in the city. I have relationships with people in the city, right? That can really help us get to the finish line. Those are the types of people that really are gonna, I think, like kill it in these next 5 to 6 years. So you're in one of the best businesses because there's enough ADU companies out there building. There's enough people who want to build them, but nobody really knows the strategy on, like how to use the code to your advantage, because that's what it's there for. I think a lot of people get intimidated thinking, I don't want to build something that's not according to code. Like, well, then read it, inform yourself. But they also don't make it easy to digest, right? So I think that's where your experience is what people really benefit from, to be honest. So I'm gonna have to pick your brain on that and see how I can be part
Yeah.
of the team.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. We're all open arms here. Yeah,
Yeah,
we need all the expertise. No one is tracking implementation. So, like, a good example of
no,
this is no. So there's SB 684, right? Which, if you need to
yeah,
understand that law, the Casita Coalition has a great guidance memo on that bill. But
right,
basically, if you're in a multifamily zone, you could lot split it up to 10 times, no matter what the zoning is, and do fee simple or condoized units now and just sell it, right? So it's zoned for an R2, you could build 10 units because they're lot splits, right? And you
mm-hmm.
could now, through SB
SB 1211.
1123,
Oh yeah,
yeah, or 1211 or 20. Oh my God, so many. It's, the issue is I'm also dyslexic, so it's like all
yeah. Oh,
the. Yeah. But you could add an ADU on each of these units too. So now you have 20 units on a multifamily zone that could be ministerial by right. And I'm working with these companies on implementation, and they were like, "Oh, we're maxing out at 4 units and 4 ADUs," and I was like, "What's going on here? What's happening?" And it's because there's paperwork with the Department of Real Estate that if you're at over 5 units and you have to build a public right of way, so even like a water connection, you're delayed by 6 months to a year. And
right.
I was, yeah, and it's like, it's these little things that people don't know. So then I have
Mm-hmm.
to go call my other clients and be like, oh, yo, let's check this real quick. Let's make sure this is working. And then also another like example of implementation is like AB 1033. You could condoize the ADU that's in your backyard if your local government opts in. The only two places that are opting in are San Jose, which is complete. If you are an ADU owner in San Jose, you could sell your ADU separately. And the
Right.
HOA agreement or whatever is like no money. Like you could, it's a very cool process. And Berkeley, which is in the middle of the process. And how those two cities became first or even knew about it, it's because I called their planning departments, and when that bill passed, it was like, hey, have you like thought about AB 1033? And they're like, what's that? And I'm like, if I knew someone in the city of Los Angeles, I'd call them right now and be like, yo,
Right.
like this is entry level home ownership opportunities. You know, it's like the implementation is just so fraught. And anyway, yeah.
No, I can hear the passion behind it, and I'm
Yeah.
so glad that there's people like you, because like I said, those are the people who are really going to solve problems, and that's one of the reasons why I started off the podcast like that. Like, I want people to walk away from this episode knowing that, what does Muhammad do in the ADU space? Well, he's out here like helping people implement, and by people, we're talking cities, we're talking people in leadership positions that can actually help us implement these strategies, because it sounds nice on paper to say, hey, I can sell my condo now, but is your city going to opt into it? Do you know what fees are associated with it? Do you know
Mm-hmm.
what financing is going to look like, from that standpoint? So it's just
Mm-hmm.
connecting all the pieces together. I think for me, one of the biggest hurdles, I think with legislation in California, we're already ahead of the game compared to other states. We're
Mm-hmm.
getting better at streamlining the process. The financing is probably the biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
Finance, like communicating with the cities, we can deal with. You got people like you and myself and Andrew who are really advocating and communicating with the cities and educating them. But what's your
Mm-hmm.
take on the financing, at least in residential? Because in multifamily, it's different.
Easy.
Easy.
Multifamily, it's easy with SB. What was it, 1123 or was it
Right.
1211?
Well, 1211, I think, but in
Yeah.
general, I mean, in multifamily, it's very black and white. You're adding more doors, aka ADUs. That's more income, more NOI. Okay, I can justify the value. But in residential, it's like, how do we justify the
Yeah.
value? If the value is not there, then you can't get funding for it. Long Beach, where I'm from,
Mm-hmm.
very ADU pro. They actually build like a lot, over 600, and they're kind of paving, the way as far as like how many ADUs are being built. But they're coming up with a loan product to give away to 10 owners, which I'm like, I'm grateful, but that's only 10 people that will get help with financing their ADU up to 250,000 with some restrictions, right? Now, I'm glad that they're doing it, but not every city is like Long Beach, where they're being proactive about, hey, how are we going to help homeowners finance these units? So what's your take on that?
Yeah. So when it comes to financing ADUs, most people were using refinancing, right? But now interest rates are too high. So if you bought a home with a 3% interest rate, there's no point to refinance.
Right.
People have the option to do a HELOC, which, is a financial option that I don't have any advice for or against. And lastly, it's the 203K renovation loan program, but that only works for attached ADUs. So like if you're building a junior ADU, it's great. Um, but it has to be done by federal law, which I'm working with some offices at the federal level to allow the 203K renovation loan program to work for detached units, and could take in 75% of income. Yeah, similar to a duplex.
Yeah, because if with junior ADUs, I like them, but they're not so appealing to investors, and even 203K loans, because you need that owner occupancy for the JADU, right?
Yeah, and I think for homeowners, it's okay. I think
Yeah.
California should change its residential code to allow 2 kitchens in a single unit, because then you could have the kitchen with the junior ADU, and then you have basically like a duplex with the ADU. That's
Right.
interesting and how that could work. But when it comes to financing, I know there's a lot of there's not a lot, but there's CDFIs, there's regional banks, there's a lot of services that offer like financial assistance in building an ADU, and they all go to me and they're like, oh, like only 5 people use this loan, like no one uses it. It's like a lower subsidized rate for like ADU construction. And I'm like, how is your marketing here? Like, who knows about this? And there isn't like a centralized place where people could look and find all the different options for ADU financing. Because maybe I'm in Oakland. Maybe there's someone in Napa that could give me a loan and feels comfortable with lending to me. We don't have that.
Yeah, which is why it's important that a lot of lenders, and I think Meredith, who's part of the Casita Coalition, board, is also she's very familiar with financing. So I think, you have to work with lenders who understand ADUs, understand how to take the income approach or cost approach in the residential space. But I think it's just a matter of time before the Fannie Mae's and the Freddie Macs and the 203Ks get better and more lenient with the financing world. But yeah, I was just curious to get your take on that, because I think that's the biggest hurdle. Once we can figure that out and figure out how to communicate with these cities, then we pretty much are ahead of the curve in as far as housing innovation. Now, one of my last questions here is for your consulting business and also for Casita, right? Like, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 6 years as far as being involved in the ADU space, and kind of where you see that going?
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to the Casita Coalition, Norena is the new ED. That is her vision. We will support her with what her vision is. So I can't speak too much on that. Just wait and see. It's going to be a big year for Casita. But for
I'm
me,
excited.
with my, You're excited?
I said I'm excited to see that. Yeah.
But for myself, I really want to focus on how we could increase missing middle housing, like up to 10 units in single family lots. I think we need to do changes to the building codes, expanding the residential code to up to 10 units from 2. So you have one inspector that looks at all the units, etc. I think we can move that DRE paperwork to 10 units, so it doesn't delay a project by 6 to 12 months. I think when it comes to pre-financing, in other countries, you could be a general contractor. You have people sign up for new homes. They
Hmm.
put in their deposits, and not even other countries, even Hawaii, and then and you could have a bond to cover the rest of the construction costs, or your capital stack is deposits and a bond, and you could construct these homes, and that's not legal in the state of California. It's the deposits are too low for that to function. So
Mm,
most developers have to go to
yeah,
banks and equity, and it's expensive.
right.
I think we could change that.
I
Yeah.
agree. I think just lowering that standard on what their base is for the deposit amount, because yeah, that's the main issue, is that it's just
Mhm.
too low of a deposit. But it's like, well, just bring it down, bring that requirement down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think 5% would be a great number, maybe like 10
Mhm.
per as long as we could protect consumers and do pre-financing. I'm happy that you've been seeing this too, so I'm not like the only one, right?
Yeah, right. No, yeah, 100%. I'm with you. I mean, I see it because I work with a lot of B2C, right? Like, clients
Mhm,
who just want to figure out how they can convert a garage, or maybe how they can, convert 10 units. Right now, I'm actually working on a list of SB 1211 properties that I've kind of filtered out, and I'm calling these owners, letting them know, like, hey, you can build, if you have an existing 8 unit, you can build up to 8. If you have a 4, we
mhm.
can do 4. And I'm kind of
Yeah,
doing a lot of the feasibility beforehand, and looking at, does it even
mhm.
qualify or not, and just bringing value to the table, because a lot of people they don't even have a
Yeah,
clue sometimes when we call them and ask them that they can do that.
mhm.
And I'm hitting 8 units, because if I hit 4 units, they're still struggling with financing, whereas 8 units,
Yeah,
they're not. Or people who
mhm.
own 8 units have other properties that they can leverage, and they're able to tap into that equity and fund, new ADU projects. But yeah, man, I really
Definitely.
am loving everything that you're doing in the space.
Oh,
I really look up to you and what you're doing
well,
with
thank you.
Casita Coalition, with your
Mhm.
consulting. I really think that there's going to be a lot of synergy with us working together at some point.
Yeah,
So how can people connect with you if they wanted to, consult with you, whether it's a
yeah.
builder, an architect, anybody who's in the ADU space, or really in the building space?
Mhm.
How can they connect with you?
Yeah, definitely. They could look up my name on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way. I also have a website, which is housingpolicyinnovations.co, not .com, but .co.
Housing.
Um, policyinnovations.co. I'll say it one more time. Housingpolicyinnovations.co.
Okay.
Or just message me on LinkedIn, and I'm very happy to provide my services. My goal is just right now we're creating an economically segregated society where you either have a multifamily rental or a single family home, a multifamily that's a rental, or a single family home to buy. We're not expanding these cities anymore. We're losing farmland,
Right.
we're losing environmental, you know what I mean? So we
Hmm.
got to do this missing middle option for people to have for sale ownership, or just more housing options later in life. And so my goal in the next 5 years is just making that happen. And whatever happens when it comes to implementation or learning about, let's say, the DRE paperwork or AB 1033, I bring that back to the legislature. I bring that back into the research. So we're informed by practitioners and what's going on in the space. We're
Hmm.
informed by data and research, and then we go and we keep innovating the space until we fix this. Because the housing crisis, this housing shortage was created by like racism, like concentrated racism over like 100 years, through zoning and then through everything else. And now we have to reverse that, and we've only been working at it for like 4 or 5 years. So
Right.
let's jumpstart this. Let's make this happen.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I mean, that's spot on the
Uh,
truth. For those of you who don't know your history, just reach out to us and we'll give you guys a quick backstory of how we were there for, quite a long time. And now trying to clean it up in the last 4 to 5 years, I'll say it's actually not that bad when you put it in perspective. But I
mhm.
am excited for the next 4 to 5 years and where that's going, and having more people like us in the space. So reach out to Muhammad. Muhammad, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you guys.
No, thank you, Stephanie. We're friends now. There we go.
We are.
Boom.
Yeah. You know, for people, I will say one more hack is Casita Coalition and Zillow recently joined together. They collaborated and created this middle housing guide book, which I think you guys should playbook that I think you guys should read so you guys understand more of the concept of middle housing. And, you know, there's some case studies in it that are from out of state or even other countries. So to your point, it's happening in other areas. So it's just a matter of us like adopting some of those strategies and making it easier. I don't think it will ever be perfect, but we can damn near get close to that, right? Through innovation. So thank you all. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening on Buzzsprout, Apple, Spotify, I really appreciate any feedback. If there's any specific topics you'd like me to touch on or have a guest speak on, please feel free to reach out. You can go to stepsellesedu.com. And that's it for now. Thank you guys for watching and listening.